Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a seriously fascinating topic today. We are going to take some incredibly dense, frankly pretty complicated census data, and we're going to translate it into a clear story about what is really happening with occupational patterns and social disparity among the Lits, historically known as scheduled castes, or SCs, in India. We're cutting straight through the noise to understand the reality of economic mobility on the ground. So let's just dive right in.
Here's our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with the illusion of mobility, then we'll look at the land ownership gap, move on to barriers to capital access, and finally wrap up with urban instability and reforms.
All right, Section 1, the illusion of mobility. Let's look at the microeconomic shifts. To really get what's going on with the data, we absolutely have to anchor ourselves in the historical baseline. Traditionally, scheduled castes have been denied property rights. The caste hierarchy essentially relegated SCs to the very edges of the occupational realm. This isn't just background info. This historical denial of property rights created the deep foundation for the economic disparities we still see. You literally can't grasp the modern census data without keeping the starting line in mind.
Now, keep that history in mind as you hear this next number, 11%. Between 1991 and 2001, the percentage of rural scheduled caste Maine workers engaged in agriculture dropped by over 11 percentage points, falling from around 84.5% down to about 73%. Now, on the surface, that sounds amazing, right? It looks like really positive, healthy economic diversification. People are leaving the fields. It seems like they're catching up to other social groups. But, as we're going to see, that surface-level assumption is a bit of an illusion.
Moving right into Section 2, the land ownership gap. Who's actually working the fields? Before we dig into the numbers, we need to quickly translate some vital census jargon. The term cultivator. In the Indian census, a cultivator isn't just anyone who works with plants. It specifically means a rural agricultural worker who has access to land. And in rural India, land isn't just dirt, right? It represents wealth, a stable livelihood, and significant social status. And knowing that definition makes the reality of the year 2001 really hit home. We're talking about a stark disparity here. Nearly half, 47% of non-SC/ST rural workers had access to land as cultivators. But for scheduled caste workers, only 27% had that same access. So right out of the gate, within the agricultural sector itself, the very foundation of wealth, land ownership, is vastly uneven. So what happens if you don't have land? Well, your options basically split into two totally different realities. Cultivators get the benefit of land access and relative economic security. But without land or the technical skills to pivot to something else, scheduled castes have historically been pushed overwhelmingly into the role of agricultural laborers. This is a position traditionally favored by the upper castes because, frankly, the workers hold zero social or economic security. It's unorganized, it's highly vulnerable, and it's tough work. When we break down the groups, it is literally a complete role reversal. For non-SC/STs, they are predominantly cultivators, nearly 47%, with only 21% working as vulnerable laborers. But for scheduled castes, the reality completely flips. Only about 27% manage to be cultivators, while a massive 46% are relegated to being landless agricultural laborers. The disparity is just baked right into those percentages. Let's move to Section 3, barriers to capital access in non-agricultural work. Okay, so we know C workers are leaving the fields. We saw that 11-point drop earlier. But where exactly are they going? Time for another quick census definition. Household industry. This means non-agricultural work done at home or within the village, like production or repairing goods. The census uses this as a key metric because if you are in a household industry, it signifies you have the capital required for actual self-employment. You have the resources to start something. But here's the fascinating part. Capital access in rural areas is just exceptionally low across the entire board. Between 1981 and 2001, engagement in household industries barely hovered around 3 to 4%, and that's for both scheduled castes and non-SC/STs alike. Basically, almost nobody in these rural areas has the capital to just bootstrap their own household enterprise. Which brings us to the catch. If they aren't starting their own businesses, what are they doing? The census lumps the rest of these non-agricultural jobs into a category called other workers. Think casual labor, pavement services, construction, jobs that require basically zero capital. And here is where the gap widens again. When SC workers left agriculture, they saw a really sharp 11.7 percentage point spike in these capital-poor jobs. Non-SCs or STs only saw a 9.89-point rise. So they aren't climbing the economic ladder into self-employment. They are largely just trading vulnerable farm labor for vulnerable non-farm labor.
Now, India is a massive, incredibly diverse country, so this isn't a monolith. Looking at national sample survey data from 1999 to 2001, geography changes the game. States like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Maharashtra show notably poor access to capital for rural SC households. But if you look at West Bengal, Punjab, or Rajasthan, things look relatively better. The local economy absolutely dictates the reality on the ground.
And finally, Section 4. Urban instability and economic reforms.
Let's shift our focus from the rural villages straight into the cities, because unfortunately, the shadows of those rural disparities follow people into the urban landscape. In cities, scheduled costs are vastly underrepresented in self-employment, facing a 9 percentage point deficit compared to non-SC/STs. Meanwhile, they are heavily overrepresented in casual labor, making up over 26% of that workforce. That means they have a 14 percentage point higher reliance on vulnerable, day-to-day casual jobs compared to other groups.
And this vulnerability really came to a head during the economic reforms of the 1990s. As public sector jobs started to dry up, guess who bore the brunt of those losses? Between 1993 and 1999, SCs suffered a steep 6.8 percentage point drop in stable, regular salaried jobs. For non-SC/STs, it was only a 2.5 point drop. The economic safety net of salaried work just eroded significantly faster for SC workers during the reforms. And the localized shockwaves from this were absolutely staggering. In Tamil Nadu, there was a massive 33 percentage point drop in salaried SC households, just huge. Gujarat took a 23-point hit, and Assam saw a 22-point drop. These are massive double-digit contractions in stable, life-changing employment. Oddly enough, Maharashtra was a rare exception here, actually seeing an increase in salaried SC households during that same window.
So we've unpacked a ton of data today, from national shifts to rural fields to urban economic reforms. And I want to leave you with a really tough but necessary question. Can true economic mobility be achieved if historical barriers to land and capital remain unresolved? Because despite decades of modernization and that surface-level illusion of workers moving away from agriculture, the data paints a very clear picture. The historical denial of property rights is still actively shaping these deep occupational disparities today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this deep dive brought the numbers to life, and I hope it leaves you wanting to explore this even further.